Yes.
I'll carry on from here. Toward the end of 1964, I was given a posting to go to England for a course of instruction. And I went back to Delhi on a few days leave. And I was selected, as a tank commander. You have a squadron commander. So there was a squadron commander's course, which was in Bovington in the Salisbury Plain of England. This is southwest of London. It's a huge plain where the British Army and tanks and gunners and all that do training. So I was detailed for this squadron commander's course. But then in England, what they did was they started for the first time a course of instruction called the All Arms Battle Group course. Okay. All arms means that there's infantry, there's tanks, there's artillery, there's supply services and so on. And you go there on the course and it's a combined group which is trained. So they canceled the squadron commander's course and the artillery battery leader's course and the infantry commander's course, and they had a single course called the All-Arms Battle Group course. So I was the first Indian to attend this sort of course, and I landed up there in the winter of 1965. The course started on February, and we landed up there on the All-Arms Battle Group course. And it's a very interesting course. It only about 2 months, but we had officers from the British Army on the Rhine and, from Europe. We had officers from Canada, and we had officers from India and some of the friendly countries. There was an officer from Libya also, if I recollect. And so we had about 40 or 50 such officers on the course. Of course, instructors were majors who used to teach you first something in the classroom, and then a tactical exercise without troops on the ground, so you got familiar with the terrain around there, the various roads and villages, etc. We'll be doing your training, and of course in Salisbury Plain. And then we actually did training with troops. So for instance, if there was an infantry battalion and a tank squadron and a gunner battery, etc., you students were marched there, and according to the appointments given to you, the actual people who were company commanders and platoon commanders and tank troop leaders and tank squadron commanders walked off the parade, and you walked on. You see? And you took over the unit. And now that unit was deployed with the mock enemy on Salisbury Plain, where you put through your paces. We came to know that I was from India and from the tank corps. So they made sure, this infantry battalion were trying to really find out, in those days, a lot of infantry was being converted to armored personnel carriers. That means tracked vehicles in which you had troops sitting inside. Now, many of the British thinkers were not very happy with this, because there's what is known as the infantry on foot and there's infantry on tracks. And they were practicing all these things, so they wanted to do some of these exercises to see how this works. So they had a 4-company battalion, 4 rifle companies. It's a British battalion. And very tough soldiers, very good soldiers. And 3 of these companies were put on to APCs, armored personnel carriers. And 1 company was on foot. They were practicing whether the whole battalion should go on to APCs, in which case it may have to reduce its organization from 4 companies to 3, because there are too many vehicles. Because every section has an armored personnel carrier. So with so many vehicles and drivers, where do the drivers come from? And you get 6 or 7 people at the back in the APC, plus you've got a crew which has got a gun and a turret and a driver, 3-man crew inside. Should the crew be from infantry? Should it be from some other organization? They are working this out. And we're doing all these exercises. And because I was a tank officer. I was always placed in the foot infantry company. They said, you chaps are very happy to ride on a tank. Now you must see what the infantry feels like. So I was made either the company commander or the platoon commander in the infantry company. They march across at night, middle of the night, all across Salisbury Plain. January and February, for instance, is not a very comfortable place, this Salisbury Plain, because there's a lot of cold, sleet, and rain that keeps coming down. So you wear a sort of a parka coat. But the water goes right up to your skin, cold water, and you're freezing, and whatever, your feet are freezing. But anyway, we did that. It's a very good training, very hard training. They also did some nuclear training. I was very interested in some of the methods of training because this way they make the sand models are very different to India. They have a net and they put all sorts of hills, put blocks underneath to make hills and valleys, and then put the terrain there so you can get a sort of a map with projections of the hills and valleys and plan your operations. And then on the ground itself, got to know all the. I had a very good time there because I understood how a Western army functions. And that terrain is different to ours. And they don't have the high mountains like the Himalaya.
Right.
They don't have the deserts like Athar Desert in the west. Nor do they have the jungle terrain that we have in our east. So we're a unique country. We've got all sorts of terrain here. Whereas in Europe and Britain, they're mostly rolling down, good country, and their techniques of tactics are vitally different in many ways. So we learned what were the differences of how you function in an army in Europe, let us say, vis-a-vis your own country in India. They're two different things because the terrain is so different. This course lasted 2 months. I made a lot of good friends, and especially 2 Canadian officers became very good friends. I noticed in the officers' mess, when in the evening you have a drink. I had no money, by the way, because the government of India was so cagey about foreign exchange in those days. You weren't even given your pay for the month. You were only given an allowance, and your allowance was 2 shillings 6 pence per day, which is nuts, you see. And your pay was kept back in India. You were not given a cent.
Oh,
You only had 2 shillings 6 pence for your, your washing man and this and that and other. There wasn't enough money to even offer a drink at the bar. So I written to my father and I said, look, people are sending me drinks on the bar. They're very friendly, but I want to return that and don't have the cash for it. So father had a friend called Major Whitmarsh Knight and his wife. The wife was a multimillionaire, and the major had left the army and was doing some of the corporate work. And he and his wife used to go to Marseille in France for summer holidays and enjoy life. He wrote to her. She was a friend of my father's from the Swami Sivananda Ashram, which was in Rishikesh. That's where they met. And this ecclesiastical group is very interesting all over the world. Everybody's searching for the truth spiritually. She was a great friend of my father because she was a great follower of Swami Sivananda. So was my dad. So he wrote to Patricia Knight, said, my boy Sonny is devoid of cash. So he says if you can send him something, he'll pay it all back. So when I arrived in the mess, there was a check of £100 lying there from Patricia Knight. And her letter was very interesting. I mean, everybody has a luck of the draw, depending on the friendships of your parents as to how you're assisted in your life. So she had a letter there. She said, dear Sonny, here is £100. Should you want anything more? This is my bank in London, Park Lane branch of so-and-so bank. This is my account number. This is the name of the manager. if you write to him for whatever you want, he will send the pounds to you. That's a bonanza.
Wow.
And I had 100 pounds there. Then my brother, elder brother, who was a colonel at that time, full colonel, he was posted as a military attaché in Canberra in Australia. So he came to know that I was short of money. He sent me about $80 of Australian money. So that also arrived. As a result, I became a rich student in this infantry school, Warminster, it's called. Warminster is the town that we were in. And in this infantry school, since the British officers and all that to be at the bar and give you a drink or something, you could return the drink and keep your end up, as one might say. At the bar, they suddenly saw that it was the first Indian officer who had enough money to stand a drink. Otherwise, the Indians were so poor that they didn't have any money for a drink. I noticed that always in the bar, there were two separate groups of people. There were a set of group of officers who were full of laughter and good fun and cracking jokes and ready to stand you drinks at the bar. And there was a stiff-necked and stiff-faced officers in one corner who were talking to each other and not bothering about talking to everybody else. So I used to ask people, what is that group and which is this group? He said, no, look, we are from Scotland or from Wales or from Ireland. We are the happy group. Those are the British. It's our place. And they think they're superior, so they stand in one place. They don't talk to anyone and they don't make friends easily. It's a division of society. Anyway, we decided eventually to get together, and since some of our directing staff, the majors, used to throw parties and call us to these parties, etc., I suggested to my group in my syndicate, as it was, we had about 10 officers in the syndicate, and there were other syndicates, 4 or 5 of them. I said, look, we've been invited 2 or 3 times by our directing staff. Our directing staff was a Canadian officer. It's a happy type with a nice wife, and they like to call us home and give us a drink or something. I said we should return this. So one of the British officers said that, look, it's not the form for a student to call a directing staff to a party, because then, he may feel that you're trying to influence the directing staff to give you a good grade or something. I said, come off it. He's already given you a party 2 or 3 times. Surely you must return the party. Anyway, we had a vote and we decided that, yes, we will give the party. So we decided to go to a pub in Warminster town, where to lay on a full-scale dinner with all the doodas, wine, and whiskey for those who wanted, etc. And we all had to put in about 15 pounds each, which we did. And then if you want to call a guest, then you have to put another 15 pounds for the guest, you see. So we had an Indian Army liaison officer, a very interesting man, a very fine man, called Brigadier Uttap from Kerala. And by the way, you must have heard the famous saying lady. She's also an Uttap, Mrs. Uttap. She married the son, and she is a very good singer. She sings in all languages and in all tones. She's got husky voice or treble voice, whatever you like. So Charlie Uttap, Major Uttap, was my elder brother. So they had invited us home to give dosa and all that sort of thing. Indian chap, missing out on his home food. A very nice wife and a very nice officer. So I called them and I paid the money for it. They said, you're the first Indian Army officer who's had the money to invite us to a separate party at a pub. A pub is very expensive, by the way. So we had this party. Now in Warminster town, I must talk about a family I met there. I'm forgetting his name, but he ran a small school. He had a daughter about 16 years old, and he used to call us home for a drink every Saturday. He said, especially you foreign officers who have no family here, because over the weekend, Friday, Saturday, all the British officers who had families and friends all over England would disappear for Saturday and Sunday, come back on duty on Monday, and they would go back home to be with their families. And we, foreign officers, who were about 10 or 12 in number, we had no families. So this chap called us to his home for drinks every Saturday. He said, I will be your family, and my daughter will be your family. You see? And we were very pleased to go there, and he to invite local people and give us a drink. We got to know people of the town, Roman stuff. I asked this chap, I said, what do you do otherwise for a living? He says, I run a school. I said, what sort of school do you run? He said, I run a school where we have very high quality teachers. And we allow the class to vote from young age, kindergarten onward, as to what subject they want to learn. So it's a democratic system. The children come, the teacher has to be very adept at science and arts and everything, very well paid. The teacher would say, all right, class, there are some subjects, what would you like to learn today? Somebody would say something, somebody something, and then the class used to vote. Even from kindergarten, then bachas used to vote. They all had to do this. For instance, somebody may say that, teacher, when I put on this switch, the light comes on. I want to know why the light comes on. Somebody would say, when I go to the toilet and open the tap, water comes out. I want to know why the water comes out of the tap. Just to give you an example. So let us say you want to check the water. The teacher says, all right, class, we voted for the water, let's all check. So they all go repair to the toilet and they all open the taps and the water comes out. This is now let's trace where this comes from. So trace the pipe from outside to see it goes to an overhead tank. You go to the overhead tank, the water. So why does the water from the tank come down to the tap? So they learn about gravity, right? What is gravity? Why is there gravity? Why do things fall if you throw them up? Why does the ball come down? You see, the water comes down by gravity. Then how does the water get up to the tank? So they go outside to a pumping system where the pumps put the water up in the tank. So how does the pump work? Why is the pump throwing the water up? So they learn about the pump. Then they trace further back and the pipes go back to some area that the water works, where they clean the water, with all sorts of sedimentation and all that, putting atom into the tank to clean the water, etc. They learn about that. So just to see why a water comes out of a tap, it may take a week of study to go and trace this on the ground as to where it comes from, and eventually come to a lake or something from which the water is coming. And the question here is, where does the lake get the water from? So they check all the streams that come out of the lake. Where does the stream come from? Precipitation, rain. Where does rain come? Because of cloud. Where does the cloud get the water from? To understand a single question like this, right from kindergarten, and there's no fixed curriculum. I was very impressed with this. I know that there are some schools in India who are doing something similar, they're private schools. But in the normal teaching in schools, you don't do this system. You have textbooks and you follow textbooks, which I don't know if you agree with me or the teacher. I have only been a student. It's very boring. Very, very boring. But to mug off things by heart, and my teacher will give you no mark. There is no mugging. But to learn on the ground is why things happen. See? So I was very impressed with that. He running the school. I said, now, how do you bring your children back into the main stream of education that the government has for you? Because to get a job in life, you have to have a degree, you have to have your senior Cambridge done or your high Cambridge or what it is. And you may get a bachelor's degree or something, so that it's a certificate for getting a job. How to join? So this is at the age of about 12 or 13 for the first British set of exams. Our students do very well because they've learned all these things by practical knowledge without following a curriculum, but they're very sharp in the head. So they do very well, and then they get into the school system of going to college and things like that. That's an interesting thing about education. I don't know what to think about our education and the new rules that have come out about education. But notice that allowing a person to think for himself or study for himself or to extract knowledge from the libraries or from the computers by himself or herself is better than talking down at the students by a teacher. Projects, you see, so, which is done in many schools in America, for instance. That's why people feel that American education is good. They want to send their children there, those who can afford it. But do Indian schools, especially government schools, follow any such system? I'm not sure, because I think they follow a very strict curriculum. You would know better than I. But this is a very good introduction to education.
Right.
So anyway, this all-on battle group course was a great. In the Indian Army, we had no armored personnel carriers. And I thought that after I finished this course, I may be sent as an instructor to either the infantry school at Mau or to the armored corps school in Ahmednagar, where we project this thought of whether the Indian Army should have armored personnel carriers or not, and if so, what sort of armored personnel carriers, what would be the method of employment of these, and do we go for it or we don't? And mark you, I knew that many infantry officers in India were deadly against this. They said, you'll spoil our infantry by trying to make us into tanks, something. Yeah, that's it. I finished my course and I took a few days leave so that I wanted to visit Paris for 2-3 days, and I wanted to go, my plane would go via Germany, Frankfurt. So Frankfurt for 2-3 days and then back to India. My wife wrote to me that, look, if you're going to Paris, I want a swimming cap for my hair.
Oh.
So I went to some British department stores and had swimming caps and all that. They have no hair. I mean, they all cut hair. Lady with the long hair and a jura and all that sort of thing, you got to have a funny type of swimming cap so that the lady can swim. So I went to Paris, and then everybody refused to speak English.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking of 1965, early 65, February 65, March. In France, they took a point not to speak English, you know.
Yeah, even now it is like that.
Yeah. So I walked on the streets of Paris trying to make myself heard. Nobody would understand what I wanted. So a lot of sign language. If you go to a bar, you're feeling thirsty because you've been walking around, you want water, they will refuse to give you water. Because nobody drinks water in France. They drink wine. Maybe because the river Seine is full of pollution. Nobody drinks it. So you're quite surprised at the bar, and if you demanded on aqua pura water, a little thimble that big they'll give to you, that's it. It's quite difficult to survive there for 3 days, but we had a very good armored corps officer as a military attaché there. He was not present in Paris in those days. He had gone to visit Belgium or something. But he fixed a hotel for me, very nice, kind lady who ran the hotel. So, the French breakfast is something totally different to the British breakfast. British breakfast is a huge breakfast. You would have as much as you like of ham and eggs and, glasses of milk or glasses of coffee or tea or whatever you wanted, and toast as many as you like, and jam and all that. So in a hotel in London, because you were paid for the bed and breakfast, one used to have a full breakfast, so you lasted out the whole day without spending any money, since you had no money. Anyway, in France, you could have easily breakfast, croissant or something, and that's it. Maybe a cup of coffee. So if you can I have an egg or something? Oh, not good for your health. So anyway, we survived that. Middle of the night, I'm walking through the streets of Paris, wondering how to. I lost my way, as a matter of fact. So I wanted a map. I found a young man in a kiosk. He had some books and newspapers. So I asked him. I said, map. No, I thought he's not going to speak English. Map. He said, are you looking for a map? He talks to me in English. So I said, you know English? He said, well, very interesting. Do you know English? I said, yes. He says, I've been on au pair. He's been to England to learn English. So you go to a family for about 5-6 months. You serve there in the family like a child of the house, but you help the mother to run the place. And look after the baby and this, that, and the other. And at the same time, you're learning English because you're speaking English every day. So he said, I've just been to UK and I came back and I've learned this English. So I'm very happy to talk English. So he said, why do you want a map? You lost? I said, yes, I'm lost. He said, where do you want to go? So I told him this hotel, so and so, so and so, near the Chambly, near the river Seine. And you cross the bridge and you reach the Champs-Élysées, the museums and things like that. I said, near that, my hotel is.
Yeah.
So he showed me how to get there. So he said, you have to say about 12 o'clock at night. He said, what are you doing for dinner tonight? So I said, what do you mean dinner? It's already midnight, so I'm not going to have anything else. I just go to bed. He said, no, you come and join me in dinner. I've got my English couple with whom I stayed. He's a retired officer from the diplomatic service. And I stayed with them. They are visiting Paris. They only speak English. They don't know French. So if you can speak English, they'll be happy to discuss things, especially a man from India whom they know nothing about. So at about 1 o'clock at night, we went to a restaurant in Champs-Élysées where this guy hosted a dinner, and I met these two. So then next day, they said we're having a lunch near the Arc de Triomphe. There is a restaurant where only the bus drivers go. They say that where the bus drivers eat is the best restaurant in the town. So there we went and steak and this, that, the other, whatever the outfit. So I met these two over lunch. Again, there we discussed so many problems about India, England, and so on. So it was interesting to find that a young man was trying to learn English, and so therefore he spoke English. Otherwise, no Frenchman would dare to speak English. It's different now, I'm sure, because they're all learning each other's languages. Language is so important. And if you can learn somebody's language, that is half the battle. So interpreters are very well paid. Anyway, I went to a department store to get a bathing cap, and I went there and I was, sorry, high. So when I take it to somebody, bathing and all that, they shoot me off to the 6th floor where bathing costumes, they were available. And all the caps were this small. So I wanted a large cap. I managed to convey to the lady, I want a large cap. She said, no, you got it wrong. You're a small man, your wife must be smaller than you, and therefore you need a small cap, you don't need a large cap. To explain that the lady has long hair because over there nobody has long hair. I knew only one sentence in French, is Je vous aime beaucoup.
Oh.
I learned that in many languages, it works well. Ich liebe dich in German. In Mizo it is Ka hamangaya MMH. I love you very much. I told the girl this, she started laughing. She thought it was a good cap. And so she went around for somebody who could speak English and brought that lady there. This guy is a good chap. Find out what you want. Then I managed to explain that my wife has long hair, and when she makes a bun, it's like this. You need a large bathing cap. Eventually, they understood, and a top-size bathing cap was produced for me. I bought for so. Went through Frankfurt. I was connected to an Indian gentleman from East Africa. He was a businessman. He had a German girlfriend. So somebody from my course rang him up from the British High Commission. There we had an Indian group. They rang him up. This is Major Sharma coming. You please look after him. We're going to spend 2 nights in Frankfurt. I arrived there and the chef was in his car. He took me straight home. He said, I'm going to give you Indian food. Chicken curry with paranthas. See? Yeah. And so he had 4 or 5 Indian friends, boys, who were very happy to meet somebody from India. And discussing so many things about how life was in Germany and relations with India and what's going on in India in 1962. This is 1964, 65 rather. We were really going into the 65 war at that time. So they all knew that something was happening. Very interested what's happening. So I asked the chap, I said, who's making all these paranthas for you? He said, this is my girlfriend.
Oh.
So I'm going to call her, let's be introduced. And she was a German girl. Young German girl with blue eyes and blonde hair. And she was making Indian paranthas and making masala curry and all that sort of thing. So there's a big relationship between Germany and France. Why is that so? It's a very interesting situation. Remember, Hitler wore a swastika also, but slightly askew, which brings bad luck. Swastika has to be absolutely straight. But he twisted it a bit and came to grief. These are religious symbols, you don't play with them. Got back to India, and instead of being posted to one of these teaching establishments as I accepted, I was told to report to the office of the Chief of Army Staff. I was quite surprised. I ended up there. Then Jain Chaudhary, who had commanded 16 Cavalry, my regiment, during the war in Burma in 1944-45, he was the army chief. And he's a big man, 6'2", very, very sharp in the head. And he met me in the corridor. He said, "Welcome to the office." And he said, "Yes, keep your mouth shut. Because once you're in the chief's office, you never open your mouth." Right? So I went there. I was given the job of a deputy military assistant. The military assistant for a full colonel, a person called Gurcharan Singh Sandhu from 18 Cavalry. Now this Gurcharan Singh Sandhu, now that is how life repeats itself. When I was a student doing a squadron commander's course in Ahmednagar, that's a tactics course, Gurcharan Sandhu was in charge of the tactical wing in Ahmednagar, was one of my instructors. They knew me from there. Okay? And he was a man who became brigade major of the 1 Armored Brigade in Babina when I was a captain in 16 Cavalry. He suggested to Hari Badwa, the then brigade commander, that we need a staff captain to get hold of Sharma. So because he had been my instructor, he knew me. And I had almost stopped the course, so he thought I was a good officer, so he got me there. Now he is on the army chief's military assistant at the rank of full colonel. He's going to be a brigadier shortly. So he told the chief that if you want a deputy MA, because the old deputy MA was getting posted out, you want him from your regiment to get hold of, as I'm known as Tich, to get hold of Tich Sharma. So Tich Sharma arrived over here. General Chaudhary was, as I told you earlier, not very fond of my father because of some problem we had between themselves. You know how generals are. My father was very sticky for the medical fitness. And when General Chaudhary had to go abroad somewhere, he was prevented from going abroad because there was something wrong with him. They said, "You get yourself cured." So he didn't like my dad at all. He knew that I was there, but since I was the officer offered to him from 16 Cavalry by my then commanding officer, I suppose he had no option. He accepted me because from the same regiment. Now it's a great learning experience in the chief's office. You have to keep your mouth shut. You came to know a lot of things if you kept your eyes and ears open. But by and large, operational matters and other matters are kept away from me. So my office was with the civilian staff. There was a civilian superintendent who was about the rank of a major, I suppose, equivalent rank of the civil services, who are paid from defense budget, by the way,
Okay.
who are managing the offices of the army. And very nice man. I got to know him very well. He was a GSO2 rank. That means a major's rank. So I was the same rank. And I was given very small jobs to do. But once in a while, Charan Sandhu would call me to his office if something interesting was happening. Right? Now, you know, the balloon between India and Pakistan was going up rapidly. I'm not talking about the early months before the 1965 war. 1965 war started in September, and I joined the chief's office in March, right? So I came to know that war clouds are developing. We had our intelligence. Field Marshal Ayub Khan was the president of Pakistan, and he took advantage of thinking about the 65 war because India was in a very poor condition. Now let me explain. What was the poor condition in which India was that Pakistan felt it should take advantage of? Firstly, The Chinese had attacked us in 1962. And Jawaharlal Nehru died a sorry man in 1964. In those days, people used to say, after Nehru, what? We had a very great leader in Nehru. If he dies, what happens next? So, when Nehru died, the idea of the Congress Party's controlling group, which is known as the syndicate, there's a fellow called Kamraj from South India who is the boss. They were kingmakers. They used to make things and take away kings. They had to decide as to who they'd like to appoint as the prime minister. Now, according to Nehru's wishes, he wanted his daughter Indira Gandhi to be the next prime minister. But the syndicate found that she was known as the Gungi Gudiya because she couldn't speak in parliament. She didn't have the gumption to speak. So they decided to make her Minister for Information and Broadcasting. She should learn how to speak in parliament before giving her the prime minister job. And not to keep the seat warm for Indira Gandhi, they said it will take about 2 years for her to learn how to speak. So meanwhile, we need a stopgap arrangement. Now, the Congress Party has got a lot of very good leaders, like Scindia of Gwalior, not the present boy, but his father. And there was a pilot, not the present boy, but his father. Pilot was an Air Force officer, they known as pilot. Very fine. What a difference. There were 2-3 top fellows who could easily be prime minister. But the trouble with the Congress Party at that time was that there are all these top guys there. They wanted to be prime minister, but nobody else wanted them to be prime minister because they wanted to be prime minister. So you had to select a person who was acceptable to all because he's a ninny. You know what a ninny is? A person who can do nothing and you can control him. So they selected a man called Lal Bahadur Shastri. Now, Lal Bahadur Shastri was a short, puny man, hardly 5 feet tall, wearing a dhoti, very religious and spiritual. And people thought that he's a good guy. He gets elected from wherever he's standing for election because he's a good chap, but he's not capable of doing anything. So they selected him to be a stopgap prime minister, right? In 1964, because Jawaharlal Nehru had died. So the first point about the weaknesses of India is that Nehru, the great leader, was dead and you got a ninny in his place, number one. Number two was that the Indian army had to produce a whole lot of fighting divisions for the northern border, which they had to defend. So they decided to raise 10 divisions. Now, division is a major general's command comprising some 15,000 men. You didn't have the money, you didn't have the weapons, you didn't have the equipment. So we're borrowing all this from America, just like Ukraine is doing now from America. Borrowing all this to defend your northern border. Now, what happened is that on the border with Pakistan, that's in Punjab and Rajasthan, we had 3 or 4 divisions here, major general's command. And what you did was you took 1/3 of the troops away from here. That means a division comprises 3 brigades, each commanded by a brigadier. Each brigade is about 3,500 men. So you took 1 brigade away to make the nucleus for the northern border. So the result, our troops in Punjab were less in strength by a large amount to the Pakistani divisions which were present there on the other side of the border, right? So we had a weakness in infantry. Why? We were raising the northern border defense of. And America was helping us. And because India was so low down in its finances, etc., America was dictating to us what we should do. For instance, make peace with Pakistan so they can face China. The 62 war had taken. How do we make peace with China? They want Kashmir, give them Kashmir. So those sort of discussions were taking place. And government of India, very slow to make up